In one of my previous videos, I made a pretty strong claim. I said that sales incentives should always be aligned with profit. I'll link to that video here. And it's true that for many of the large publishers that I've worked with, profit is the main objective. And so in that case, I believe that it's 100% true that sales incentives should align. But that framework is not complete. Over time, I've worked with more and more different types of clients, and I've come to a more refined position, which is that sales incentives should align with the company's true objectives. And most of the time, that is profit, but it's not always. There are definitely a handful of cases where it is the right decision not to align your sales team to profitability. So in this video, I am going to walk through 5 cases, and the 5th one is almost never talked about. All right, let's go through them. The first one is when you are in a land grab for market share. This is typically a situation where you are launching a new product, or you're entering a new market, or you're trying to compete aggressively. In those situations, your goal is not efficiency. The goal is adoption. Your customers, you want them to use the product, you want distribution, you want scale. And if you tie your sales team too tightly to profitability, what you're going to do is find that they're going to avoid the harder to sell products, and even if those are strategically critical. So in this case, it is completely rational to say, I don't care about margin now, I care about getting into the market. All right, the second case, which is somewhat related, is strategic accounts or new logo acquisition. And this is a variant on getting into more market share, but applied to the individual customer level. There are some customers that are simply more valuable than the deal themselves. They might give you credibility in the market, they might become a case study, they might unlock a whole category of future demand. And in those situations, you are not worried about the economics of the current deal. You are making an investment. You are effectively trading off short-term margin for the long-term value. So again, it can make sense to incentivize sales on winning the account, not on the profitability of that first deal. The third situation is when you are in a product validation or learning phase. In my original example, I assumed that we know which products are profitable, but sometimes you don't. You're still trying to figure it out. You don't know which segments will work, you don't know which use cases are going to stick, and you don't know where the margins are ultimately going to land. And in this situation, the goal is learning velocity. You want your sales team out there selling, experimenting, getting feedback, and generating data. If you constrain them with profitability targets too early, you'll slow that down. The fourth is when simplicity matters more than precision. And one of the things that I talked about in my original video is that profit-based companies often have compensation schemes that are hard to implement. You have data issues, you have to make adjustments, you have to worry about timing differences, and sometimes that just makes the plan very complex. Salespeople don't trust the numbers, they don't understand how they're getting paid, and behavior actually becomes worse, not better, when you implement that scheme. So in some cases, it is better to use a proxy like revenue, even if it is not perfectly aligned with profit, because it is clear, it is predictable, and it drives consistent behavior. And now to number 5, which I think is a particularly interesting case and not talked about very much. And that's when sales doesn't actually affect the economic outcome. Imagine a salesperson whose job is to go out and secure a $1 million commitment from an advertiser. They're responsible for getting the budget, but at the time that they close the deal, the details of the campaigns that are going to follow are unknown. So the mix of products, the inventory, how the spend is allocated, all of that occurs much later. So it might be handled by a sales support team, by account management, by operations, or even by an algorithm. So in that situation, if the salespeople can influence the size of the deal, but not the profitability of the deal, then you should not be linking them to profit. And this creates an important principle. You cannot hold someone accountable for margin if they cannot influence the drivers of that margin. So the right answer in this particular case might actually be a split model. The account executive might be compensated on gross revenue of bookings because that's what they control, and the downstream teams may be compensated on margin or yield because that's what they control. So, stepping back, what does this mean? My original position still holds. In general, if you want your company to make more money and be more profitable, align your sales incentives with profit. But the refined version is this. Sales incentives should align with your company's true objectives, and they should align with what the individual can actually control. And in most cases, that will point you towards profit. One last cautionary note. Don't be unclear on what your company is solving for. I've seen companies whipsaw back and forth between thinking that they're solving for profit or the ability to grow top line and enter a new market. If you're whipsawing like that, you create confusion for years within your company. I'm James Deaker. I am the Yield Doctor. I work with my clients on exactly these types of problems. If you're facing them, reach out to me, please. Thanks for watching.